On the real estate exam, fair housing questions are designed to be deceptively tricky, testing your grasp of protected classes, exemptions, and enforcement nuances. With this video, we're going to sharpen your skills and get you exam ready. And don't miss what's happening in the bottom corner. It's designed to supercharge your exam prep. We'll explain more in just a minute. Let's get started.
Core Fair Housing Laws and Protected Classes. Fair Housing Act of 1968 and its amendments. Which of the following is not a protected class under the Fair Housing Act of 1968 and its amendments? Is it A, race, B, age, C, religion, or D, national origin? The answer is B, age. What makes this one challenging? The inclusion of similar-sounding terms may confuse test takers. The Fair Housing Act protects against discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, disability, familial status, and national origin, but not age. Under the Fair Housing Act, which of the following would not be considered a discriminatory practice by a landlord? Is it A, refusing to rent to someone with a poor credit history? B, charging higher rent to families with children? C, refusing to rent to someone because of their national origin? Or D, refusing to rent to someone because of their religion? The answer is A, refusing to rent to someone with a poor credit history. What makes this one challenging? The question's negative wording requires careful reading. Refusing to rent to someone with a poor credit history is not discriminatory, as it is not based on a protected class.
Have you noticed the code in the bottom corner? Next time you're stumped, take that code to birdsy.ai for immediate help and a free study session with Birdsy, your personal AI study partner. Plus, you'll get access to hundreds of additional questions, helping you move closer to passing your exam with confidence. The next time you're feeling unsure or stuck, give it a try.
Which of the following scenarios would likely be a violation of the Fair Housing Act's protection against discrimination based on disability? Is it A, a landlord refusing to allow a tenant to paint their walls? B, charging a higher security deposit for tenants with pets? C, denying a request to install a wheelchair ramp for a tenant? Or D, refusing to rent to a smoker? The answer is C, denying a request to install a wheelchair ramp for a tenant. What makes this one challenging? The scenarios include details that could mislead. Denying a reasonable accommodation for a tenant with a disability is a violation of the Fair Housing Act. Which of the following statements about the Fair Housing Amendments Act of 1988 is true? Is it A, it removed race as a protected class? B, it added protections for individuals with disabilities? C, it eliminated the need for reasonable accommodations? Or D, it exclusively focused on religious discrimination? The answer is B, it added protections for individuals with disabilities. What makes this one challenging? The options include partial truths. The 1988 amendments expanded protections to include disability and familial status, which were not originally covered in the 1968 Act. Which of the following would be considered a legal advertisement under the Fair Housing Act? Is it A, apartment for rent, ideal for single professionals? B, perfect for young couples? C, no kids allowed? Or D, family-friendly neighborhood? The answer is D, family-friendly neighborhood. What makes this one challenging? The options include misleading phrases. Advertisements must not suggest a preference or limitation based on protected classes. Family-friendly is acceptable if it doesn't imply exclusion of others. 7 federally protected classes. Which of the following scenarios would not be considered a violation of the Fair Housing Act's protection based on familial status? Is it A, refusing to rent to a family with children because the apartment is on the top floor? B, charging higher rent to families with children compared to single individuals. C. Designating certain floors as senior-only in a housing community for elderly residents. Or D. Advertising apartments as perfect for singles only. The answer is C. Designating certain floors as senior-only in a housing community for elderly residents. What makes this one challenging? The question includes a negative phrasing by asking what is not a violation, which can easily be overlooked. The correct answer highlights a situation where housing restrictions are legally permissible. Which of the following practices could potentially violate the Fair Housing Act's protection of race? Is it A. Offering different amenities based on income level? B. Suggesting neighborhoods based on racial composition? C. Providing discounts to veterans? Or D. Charging different security deposits based on credit score? The answer is B. Suggesting neighborhoods based on racial composition. What makes this one challenging? The options are similarly worded, which may confuse test takers. The correct choice involves racial steering, which is illegal under the Fair Housing Act. How does the Fair Housing Act protect individuals based on sex? Is it A. Prohibits sexual harassment in housing practices? B. Requires equal rent for all genders at all times? C. Mandates gender-neutral bathrooms in all rental properties? Or D. Ensures identical amenities for men and women only? The answer is A. Prohibits sexual harassment in housing practices. What makes this one challenging? The inclusion of absolutes in the options might mislead. The Act prohibits discrimination based on sex, including sexual harassment, which is a common misunderstanding. Which of the following scenarios could be considered discrimination based on religion under the Fair Housing Act? Is it A. Offering a discount to members of a local church? B. Providing information about local religious services? C. Requiring tenants to follow a specific dress code? Or D. Refusing to rent to someone due to their religious practices? The answer is D. Refusing to rent to someone due to their religious practices. What makes this one challenging? The question uses negative wording, which can be tricky. The correct answer involves a scenario where housing is denied due to religious beliefs.
If you're finding this helpful, please take a minute to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more practice exams, useful tips, and complimentary study sessions with Birdsy.
Disability and reasonable accommodations. A landlord refuses to allow a tenant with a disability to install a grab bar in the bathroom, citing aesthetic concerns. Under the Fair Housing Act, what is the landlord required to do? Is it A. Provide financial assistance for the installation? B. Allow the modification at the tenant's expense? C. Offer an alternative accommodation instead? Or D. Deny the modification if it affects property value? The answer is B. Allow the modification at the tenant's expense. What makes this one challenging? The scenario includes irrelevant details about aesthetics, which might distract test takers. The Fair Housing Act requires landlords to allow reasonable modifications at the tenant's expense, not considering aesthetics. Which of the following is not considered a reasonable accommodation under the Fair Housing Act? Is it A. Refusing to allow an emotional support animal? B. Installing a ramp for wheelchair access? C. Assigning a designated parking space close to the building? Or D. Allowing a service animal despite a no-pet policy? The answer is A. Refusing to allow an emotional support animal. What makes this one challenging? The use of not can easily be overlooked. Service animals are considered reasonable accommodations, but emotional support animals are not always recognized unless necessary. A tenant with a disability requests a reserved parking spot near their unit. The landlord claims it's impossible due to existing regulations. How should the landlord proceed under the Fair Housing Act? Is it A, deny the request due to existing parking regulations? B, charge an additional fee for the reserved spot? C, suggest the tenant find alternative transportation? Or D, evaluate if exceptions can be made to accommodate the request? The answer is D, evaluate if exceptions can be made to accommodate the request. What makes this one challenging? The mention of existing regulations might mislead test takers. The Act requires landlords to make exceptions if possible, even if it means adjusting existing policies. Familial status and senior housing exceptions. In a community claiming the senior housing exception under the Fair Housing Act, which of the following is not a valid requirement? Is it A, at least 80% of the units must have one person aged 55 or older? B, the community must publish policies showing its intent to be senior housing? C, all residents must be aged 55 or older? Or D, the community must provide facilities and services designed for older persons? The answer is C, all residents must be aged 55 or older. What makes this one challenging? The question uses a negative phrasing by asking for what is not a requirement. Senior housing must have at least one resident aged 55 or older in 80% of units, but no requirement mandates all residents be over 55. Which of the following scenarios would violate the familial status protection under the Fair Housing Act? Is it A, refusing to rent to a family because they have children under 18? B, charging higher rent to a family with teenagers compared to a couple without children? C, preferring tenants who are students over families with children? Or D, offering a discount to single professionals in a predominantly family-oriented community? The answer is A, refusing to rent to a family because they have children under 18. What makes this one challenging? The scenarios include unnecessary details. Denying housing to a family with children under 18 because of their presence directly violates familial status protection. A housing provider claims a senior housing exemption but allows families with children to live in 30% of its units. Which statement is true? Is it A, the housing provider maintains its senior housing status? B, the housing provider must evict families to regain senior status? C, the housing provider can advertise as senior housing? Or D, the housing provider may lose its senior housing exemption? The answer is D, the housing provider may lose its senior housing exemption. What makes this one challenging? The presence of families in 30% of units suggests noncompliance. For senior housing exemption, 80% of units must have at least one person aged 55 or older.
Stuck on a question? Just think of the Birdsy link in the description as your friendly neighborhood superhero, swooping in to save the day with answers. Feel free to explore it now and return to continue. Simply hit pause, and we'll be waiting when you get back.
Discriminatory practices and legal traps. Blockbusting, steering, and redlining. Which of the following is not a characteristic of blockbusting in real estate? Is it A, inducing panic selling through racial scare tactics? B, encouraging homeowners to sell by predicting neighborhood decline? C, offering lower mortgage rates to encourage relocation? Or D, promoting racial segregation through misinformation? The answer is C, offering lower mortgage rates to encourage relocation. What makes this one challenging? The use of not requires careful attention to detail. Blockbusting involves inciting fear to sell homes, not offering lower mortgage rates, which is unrelated to the practice. Which practice involves denying services to residents in certain areas based on racial or ethnic composition? Is it A, blockbusting, B, redlining, C, steering, or D, gentrification? The answer is B, redlining. What makes this one challenging? The question's phrasing might confuse those who conflate similar practices. Redlining specifically involves denying services based on racial composition, unlike steering or blockbusting. Which of the following is a legal consequence of being found guilty of steering in real estate? Is it A, fines and penalties, B, community service, C, loss of client trust, or D, increased sales? The answer is A, fines and penalties. What makes this one challenging? The options include legal and non-legal consequences, requiring careful consideration. Fines and penalties are direct legal consequences of steering violations. Which statement about steering is false? Is it A, steering involves directing buyers to certain neighborhoods based on race? B, steering can lead to racial segregation in communities? C, steering is prohibited under the Fair Housing Act? Or D, steering involves denying loans to certain racial groups? The answer is D. Steering involves denying loans to certain racial groups. What makes this one challenging? The question's negative phrasing, false, can easily mislead. Steering does not involve denying loans, but rather directing buyers based on race or ethnicity. In what way does redlining impact the economic development of affected neighborhoods? Is it A, increases property values, B, restricts access to credit and investment, C, encourages diverse business growth, or D, promotes infrastructure improvements? The answer is B, restricts access to credit and investment. What makes this one challenging? The options include both direct and indirect impacts, requiring careful analysis. Redlining restricts access to credit, stifling economic growth and perpetuating poverty. Discriminatory advertising and code words. Which of the following advertising phrases could unintentionally imply discriminatory practices under fair housing laws? Is it A, cozy and quiet, B, close to public transport, C, family-friendly neighborhood, or D, pet-friendly? The answer is C, family-friendly neighborhood. What makes this one challenging? The phrase family-friendly might seem benign, but can imply discrimination against single persons or those without children. It's crucial to avoid implying a preference for certain familial statuses. Which phrase in a housing advertisement is least likely to be considered discriminatory? Is it A, perfect for young professionals, B, spacious garden, C, ideal for retirees, or D, exclusive community? The answer is B, spacious garden. What makes this one challenging? The phrase spacious garden is purely descriptive of the property feature, unlike the other options that may imply a preference for certain demographics. Which of the following phrases in a housing ad is most likely to lead to a discrimination claim? Is it A, modern amenities, B, close to schools, C, friendly community, or D, no kids allowed? The answer is D, no kids allowed. What makes this one challenging? No kids allowed is a blatant exclusion of families with children, which directly violates fair housing laws. The other options are more nuanced and less likely to be discriminatory. Disparate impact versus intentional discrimination. A company implements a policy that requires all employees to pass a physical fitness test. Which of the following best describes the potential legal issue with this policy? Is it A, intentional discrimination against older employees, B, intentional discrimination against younger employees, C, disparate impact on employees with disabilities, or D, no legal issue since the policy applies to all employees? The answer is C, disparate impact on employees with disabilities. What makes this one challenging? The scenario involves understanding the difference between disparate impact and intentional discrimination. A policy can unintentionally affect certain groups more, leading to disparate impact claims. Which of the following scenarios does not illustrate disparate impact in workplace hiring practices? Is it A, requiring a college degree for a job unrelated to education? B, hiring based on personal recommendations exclusively? C, implementing a height requirement unrelated to job duties? Or D, mandating a specific test score for job eligibility? The answer is B, hiring based on personal recommendations exclusively. What makes this one challenging? The question uses negative wording, asking for what does not illustrate disparate impact. It requires careful reading to identify the correct scenario. Related laws and oversight agencies. Civil Rights Act of 1866 and Fair Housing Scope. Which of the following scenarios would not be covered under the Fair Housing Act but may still be addressed by the Civil Rights Act of 1866? Is it A, a landlord refusing to rent to a tenant based on race? B, a restaurant refusing service based on race? C, a homeowner refusing to sell their home based on the buyer's religion? Or D, a lender denying a mortgage based on national origin? The answer is B, a restaurant refusing service based on race. What makes this one challenging? The Fair Housing Act specifically addresses discrimination in housing-related activities, whereas the Civil Rights Act of 1866 broadly prohibits racial discrimination. The scenario involving racial discrimination in housing is covered under both, but other scenarios may not be. Which is a limitation of the Civil Rights Act of 1866 in comparison to the Fair Housing Act? Is it A, it only applies to federally funded housing? B, it does not cover discrimination based on sex? C, it only prohibits racial discrimination? Or D, it requires proof of intent to discriminate? The answer is C, it only prohibits racial discrimination. What makes this one challenging? The Civil Rights Act of 1866 only addresses racial discrimination, while the Fair Housing Act covers additional protected classes. This distinction can be overlooked if not carefully considered. Equal Credit Opportunity Act. A lender receives a credit application from a married applicant who is applying individually. Under the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, which of the following actions is not permissible? Is it A, requesting the applicant's income information? B, inquiring about the applicant's credit history? C, requiring the applicant's spouse to co-sign the loan? Or D, asking if the applicant plans to have children? The answer is C, requiring the applicant's spouse to co-sign the loan. What makes this one challenging? The scenario includes marital status, which might mislead test takers. The ECOA prohibits requiring a spouse's signature unless the spouse is a co-applicant or joint account holder. Under the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, which of the following situations would most likely be considered a violation? Is it A, offering a lower interest rate to applicants with higher credit scores? B, denying credit to an applicant solely because they are 70 years old? C, requesting additional documentation from self-employed applicants? Or D, refusing to extend credit to an applicant with a history of bankruptcy? The answer is B, denying credit to an applicant solely because they are 70 years old. What makes this one challenging? The options include subtle distinctions between permissible and impermissible actions. Denying credit solely based on age is a clear violation unless age is a legitimate factor. Enforcement by HUD and testing programs. Which of the following is not a method used by HUD to enforce fair housing laws? Is it A, conducting investigations? B, facilitating conciliation agreements? C, initiating private litigation? Or D, holding administrative hearings? The answer is C, initiating private litigation. What makes this one challenging? The question uses negative wording, making it easy to overlook the not. HUD does not use private litigation as an enforcement method, relying instead on investigations, conciliation, and administrative hearings. In fair housing testing programs, what is the primary purpose of using matched pairs of testers? Is it A, to provide a variety of testing results, B, to detect differential treatment, C, to ensure compliance with local housing codes, or D, to gather demographic data? The answer is B, to detect differential treatment. What makes this one challenging? The options include similar terms, making it tricky. Matched pairs are used to identify differential treatment by comparing experiences of testers with similar qualifications but different protected characteristics.
Notice the code in the corner. When you're stumped by a question, enter it at birdsy.ai for immediate help. Enjoy complimentary study sessions and access to hundreds of additional questions to help you pass your exam with confidence.
Real-world scenarios and application. Fair housing violations in practice, scenario-based. A homeowner refuses to sell their house to a family because they believe the family's cultural background will lower the neighborhood's property values. Which fair housing violation does this scenario illustrate? Is it A, discrimination based on age, B, discrimination based on gender, C, discrimination based on national origin, or D, discrimination based on disability? The answer is C, discrimination based on national origin. What makes this one challenging? The scenario includes assumptions about property values, which might mislead. The correct answer is discrimination based on national origin, violating the Fair Housing Act's protections against such biases. A leasing agent consistently directs families with young children to apartments on the ground floor, citing convenience, despite their request for higher floors. What fair housing violation does this represent? Is it A, discrimination based on race, B, discrimination based on familial status, C, discrimination based on religion, or D, discrimination based on occupation? The answer is B, discrimination based on familial status. What makes this one challenging? The mention of convenience might seem helpful, but is discriminatory. Steering based on familial status is illegal under the Fair Housing Act, which protects families with children from such practices. Fair housing in advertising, showings, and screening. A property manager includes the phrase "quiet neighborhood, ideal for retirees" in a rental advertisement. Which aspect of this advertisement could potentially violate fair housing laws? Is it A, quiet neighborhood, B, rental advertisement, C, ideal for retirees, or D, property manager? The answer is C, ideal for retirees. What makes this one challenging? The phrase "ideal for retirees" suggests a preference for older individuals, potentially discriminating against families or younger tenants. Fair housing laws prohibit advertising that expresses a preference based on age or familial status. During a property showing, which of the following actions is least likely to result in a fair housing violation? Is it A, suggesting that the neighborhood is family-friendly, B, providing factual information about the property's square footage, C, highlighting that the property is near religious institutions, or D, discussing the demographic makeup of the neighborhood? The answer is B, providing factual information about the property's square footage. What makes this one challenging? The phrasing "least likely" requires careful reading. Providing factual information about the property is neutral and less likely to lead to discrimination compared to other actions. Which screening practice is most likely to comply with fair housing laws? Is it A, screening applicants based on their social media profiles, B, giving preference to applicants who are married, C, rejecting applicants based on their criminal history without a clear policy, or D, applying the same income verification criteria to all applicants? The answer is D, applying the same income verification criteria to all applicants. What makes this one challenging? The question asks for the practice most likely to comply, which requires evaluating all options. Applying the same criteria to all applicants ensures compliance and fairness.
Thanks for joining us today. If you found this video helpful, subscribe to our channel for more practice exams, tips, and tricks. And don't forget to visit birdsy.ai for complimentary study sessions with Birdsy, your AI-powered study partner.